Hey guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my December wrap-up. So in December I read 15 total books. Of those, 5 were romance, 5 were fantasy, 4 were mystery, and 1 was historical fiction. So 3 of these books, these 3, I've already talked about in my November wrap-up because I read them as part of a Goodreads Choice Awards reading challenge that leaked into December a little bit. So if you want to hear about those 3, look at that video. And so I'll be talking about the other 12 in this one. So the first one I read this month was Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, and wow, this book, incredible. Fonda Lee really knows how to stick the landing of a trilogy. This was so good. It spanned decades, and yet what Fonda Lee was able to put into one book was amazing. There was so much that happened, but it never felt like it was overstuffed. Never felt like, oh, this is too much. Never felt like, oh, it's way too long. She should just read another one. It was amazing. She spanned so many years too, and the way she did time jumps really worked for me. Like, I never felt like I was missing out on too much by skipping chunks of time to just get through so many years in just one book. It was amazing. The characters, so good. Just the way their characters have kind of resolved themselves in this last book from where we started in the first one was amazing. And it was really interesting watching the younger generation growing up. That being said, this is still Hilo, Shay, and Andon's book. I know some people have said they wish they got to know the younger generation more, but I didn't really expect that. This book really is just about, is like the this series, I guess, is really just the over-encompassing story of Shay and Hilo and Andon's generation. And so we see the kids and kind of see them setting up for what would happen once they're like the main figures in the clans, but it really is still the others, and so you don't get to know the kids as well. So if you are hoping for that, you might be a little bit let down by that. But I thought it was still amazing, and yeah, this trilogy was really good and really, really great ending to the trilogy. Next, I read For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. This follows a teacher at a boarding school where people start dying, and this hooked me so quickly, very on the edge of your seat kind of read. Our main character was like the perfect kind of unlikable, manipulative psychopath of a thriller main character that I really enjoyed reading, and I thought his motivations behind what he was doing were interesting because they were kind of felt like different from what I like kind of would expect, and at the root of them they were sympathetic. It was like he took a sympathetic desire and then just went totally crazy with it instead of like normal people would, but at the root it was like kind of a sympathetic thing, and it was really interesting. I also like the shifting point of views in this because you could really start following the different threads as certain different people were like getting more entangled or trying to figure out what's happening and kind of following where everyone thought what was happening was going, and it was really interesting. I enjoyed this one. Next, I read Winterkeep by Kristen Kishore. This is the 4th book in the Grayson Realm series. This was just okay. I did really like the shift in the kind of world it was in. So the first 3 books in the series are in these kind of standard fantasy, like monarchy worlds, and I like that, don't get me wrong, but this one was like a shift to this kind of democratic nation that was kind of more steampunky as far as its like level of technology, very urban, and I really enjoyed this new, exploring this new different kind of world from the rest of the series. I like that a lot. I also enjoyed following Gideon and Hava, two of the characters, as they are on their quest to kind of find Queen Bitterblue, who disappears at the beginning of the book. I really enjoyed that storyline. In this book we get a new character, Lavisa, who is a student and the child of some of the influential political figures in this world, and I initially enjoyed her, but where she kind of fell off for me was once her attitude and like actions regarding sex started becoming more of the plot. Kristen Cashore has always kind of had a more progressive representation of sex and relationships in her book, which I've seen people who really hate that in her previous. I didn't ever really think twice about it. I was just kind of like, but in this one I found the way she portrayed sex very off-putting, and a lot of it was revolving around Lavisa's relationship with it. Well, one, we got a lot of, oh, so-and-so sleeping with so-and-so in the school where Lavisa goes, which I just didn't care about. I was like, I don't care who's sleeping with who. I just don't care at all. Not even a little bit. And with Lavisa, I really didn't like the way she viewed it, because she was like, would like use sex as very much as a tool. Like she would, like there was 2 specific instances where she like used sex as like, oh, let me just sleep with this person because it's convenient in the moment, will give me like a cover story for why I'm here. And it was very like using it to her own good, but the other person didn't know she was just using them as like a cover. They thought, oh, she's like interested in sleeping with me, great. And I just like didn't like the way it was a very one-sided, completely, I don't know. I didn't like that. I found it very off-putting. I wish like if she was gonna use it, like the other person should be aware they're being used for this purpose, kind of deal. I found it very off-putting. I didn't enjoy that at all. I also, kind of going along with the hearing so much about who's sleeping with who that I didn't care about, this book felt too long. Like that kind of is part of it. It's like there's just stuff, and I was like, I just don't care. The book was like, I wish the book felt like it could have been shorter, and I wish it had been shorter. I just like, I don't know, I just felt like it just went on too long. So it was just okay. There, again, things I liked, things I didn't like. There was, another thing I liked. There was these foxes that like bonded with people as like fox companions. I thought that was very interesting. That was definitely interesting. I enjoyed that kind of fox animal companion aspect of this. So anyways, overall, just okay. Definitely my least favorite of the 4 Gracing Realm books, unfortunately. Next I read The Bees by Layleen Paul. This is described as The Handmaid's Tale, but like in a beehive, and that is a very apt description. We follow this one sanitation bee, which is like the lowliest class of bees, as she kind of ends up stumbling into other parts of the beehive that she's not like roles and kind of like I guess kind of like working her way up. It felt kind of like right place, right time a lot of times more than anything. And this book was super weird. I felt like I was only max 80% comprehension at any point in this book. Just something about the way it was written was very kind of confusing, but it felt like it was written that way on purpose, not as like a fault. And there's just so many weird scenes that I'd read and be like, what the heck is happening? So I don't really have a lot of concise thoughts on this other than just the general weirdness of it. But if you're looking for like some kind of dystopian vibe, something different, like try this one. Next I read Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I really like this book. This was a mystery following 2 dads whose sons were married, and while their sons were alive, the dads were like not really accepting. And then after the sons were murdered, the dads kind of like had this like epiphany moment of, oh, I just wish they were alive. I don't care what they were doing in their lives anymore. I just wish they were here still and not dead kind of feeling. And so with that new feeling, they kind of used that emotion to fuel this vengeance fueled investigation into their son's murder, because they realized the police are kind of just like headed dead end and kind of just like, it's a cold case now. Like they didn't really put a ton of effort into figuring it out, so they're like, we're gonna figure it out. And I enjoyed it. This ended up being a lot grittier than I expected, I guess. Like, I don't know, hearing like, oh, the dads are gonna investigate themselves, to me as a description made me think it was gonna be more like cozy mystery vibes, and this was like kind of intense, gritty, and like there was a lot of them going around to gangs and like beating people up, and there was a lot of violence in their investigation that I just wasn't expecting. It was very good. I think I just had mostly heard that this book was good. I hadn't heard a lot of people talk about the details of it, so I just like didn't realize. But it was definitely very good, very well written, and it definitely had me hooked into finding out kind of who did it. And there was definitely some reveal I definitely wasn't necessarily expecting. Some I was, kind of like that good middle of the line, a little bit of expected, a little bit unexpected, and I enjoyed it. Next I read Ace of Spades by Frida Abike Iamidi, and this is another mystery. This is described as Get Out meets Gossip Girl, and I think that is one of the most fitting comp titles I have seen. It's definitely that. It's that. So for the Gossip Girl half, we have this kind of anonymous figure named Aces who keeps dropping these tidbits of gossip about just 2 characters, just Chi and Devon. So like they're focusing on these 2 characters, and so a lot of this book is these 2 characters who we bounce between perspectives, trying to figure out why they're the targets. And the Get Out side is kind of this theme of a lot of, as you start reading this, the mystery is more than just kind of like petty gossip. It ends up having a lot of themes of racism and classism and homophobia, which I think plays more into the kind of the Get Out vibes, because the 2 main characters in this book are the only 2 black students at a private school of white people. This was definitely good. It was a very slow burn mystery. If you don't like slow burn mysteries, you might not be into the kind of the pacing of this plot. But the end definitely sped up, like as everything was kind of coming together at the end. It definitely picked up speed towards the end. So just if you're not in a slow burn process, know that. But I really enjoyed it. even when I found myself disagreeing with Chi and Devon on how to like figure out or handle things, I found that the decisions they were making were very realistic to who they were, even if I personally would have disagreed with what they were doing. And I really liked how different the two main characters are, and I think our author did a really good job of like crafting these two characters who are faced with the same situation but just have totally different perspectives and ideas on how to handle it based on their upbringing, because we have one of these characters is kind of a poor scholarship student and the other is a rich student. And so I just thought she did a really good job highlighting just the differences there and like between their like the classism between the two of them, in addition to what she was doing with kind of the racism aspect of this plot. The next book I read was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan. This was an arc I had, so I have a full video review of it, which I will link, and you can hear all my thoughts there. But overall, I really like this. This is the first book in a new adult fantasy duology. If you have been enjoying this kind of trend I've been noticing, like mythological folktale retellings, you should definitely pick this up. It's inspired by a Chinese mythological figure, Chang'e, the moon goddess. So definitely recommend if you're into that, and check out my full thoughts in my review. Next, I read Mangoes and Mistletoe by Adriana Herrera. This was a romance novella I read for a book club, and I didn't really like this. The setup was two female bakers who are paired together for a baking competition in Scotland. So it's a lesbian relationship, and the problem I had was I didn't like the two characters. It was a grumpy sunshine trope, and I think both characters leaned too far into their trope. So our grumpy character, Kiskea, was too grumpy. She was super rude at the beginning of the book, and I found it very off-putting, and I didn't like her from the start. And so that was like so that kind of like wrote her off. And then our sunshine character I also thought was too much. She like pushed way too hard with Kiskea to try to get her to like open up and stuff. And I'm like, dude, you just met. Just leave her alone. Like, stop pushing so hard. And then also, so both of these characters come from immigrant families. Kiskea is someone who grew up in America and like visited the Dominican kind of more on like holidays, visiting family, whereas our other character grew up there and then moved here. So they have two very different experiences. And I think the other problem I had with this book was it felt like the author was trying to say the experience where you're super connected to your culture is the right one, and the one where you're not as connected and not really as interested for various reasons is the wrong experience. And I didn't like that. It felt very weird for her to be saying there's only one right way to be an immigrant in the U.S. And obviously I have no experience with this, as I'm not an immigrant or from an immigrant family, but it felt weird to me. Like, that was one of the things that our sunshine character, whose name I'm totally blanking on, was being pushy to Kiskea was about. She was like really pushy about her embracing her roots, and I was like, but why? Why does she need to? Like she doesn't need. I just didn't think she needed to. If she wanted to embrace them more, great. But like, you didn't need to push her, and I found that kind of off-putting as well. Next, I read The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. Unfortunately, another dud in a row. This was a mystery, kind of an isolated mystery at this old sanatorium that had been turned into a luxury hotel up in the Alps, kind of isolated in the mountains. And so our main character was a detective who was there with her boyfriend to celebrate her estranged brother's engagement. They're kind of reconnecting on this trip. And I liked it at first. I really liked the vibes. That was the one thing I really liked. This book had great vibes. It had the great isolated in the wintry mountains vibes. That was the main thing I liked about it. I was interested at first, kind of interested in where the mystery was going to go with the first disappearance. But then once the actual like investigating started, so our main character was a detective. She kept coming to these revelations that were shocking, not because they were like twists, but because I was shocked that these details were being spelled out in page as some kind of shocking connection, because they all felt like really obvious. And so I was like, oh, you're really pointing it out, this super obvious thing. And also, wow, our detective character took a long time to get there. So like, thoroughly unimpressed with her as a character. And then, I don't know, something about the whole plot just came across very lackluster. I will say the author did get me, and that I didn't know who did it. But when we got to the reveal, it just felt, I don't know, it just like felt lackluster, I think, because I just never really felt the stakes building. And so I was never kind of on the edge of my seat, oh my god, who did it, kind of deal. So this was just, man, it wasn't great. Next, I read The King of Atlantis by Megan Whelan Turner. This is the third book in the Queen's Thief series, and I really enjoyed this one. I think this is the one I like the best so far. This follows the story of the new King of Atlantis and kind of him settling into that role with a lot of pushback from the subjects because he's not from Atolia. He kind of married into the job, so to say. But instead of getting this book from his perspective, we get it from this perspective of a guard that ends up getting pulled into the king's kind of plots and inner circle. Like, he was not initially a king's guard. He was just like a normal guard. And he ends up getting pulled in as a result of some things that happened in the beginning of the book. And I really like that perspective. It was very interesting kind of seeing the king and queen's plots and schemes come to light through the guard who didn't know anything about them. So like you like see little tendrils, but you don't realize that these are being dropped as part of a scheme like you might have if you're reading from the king's point of view until the scheme has been completed, and then you're like, oh, that's what all those little things were. Interesting. And I really enjoyed that. I also just like the guard we were reading from the point of view of, and kind of his mental journey going through from the beginning of the book to the end, where he's like didn't like the king at first and then ends up liking him. Next I read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellfleur. This is a story about two girls who are set up on a blind date by one of their brothers, and it goes really horribly. But when the brother asks about it later, one of the girls ends up lying about how it went great to kind of get him off her back about dating. And then so they end up doing fake dating because the other girl also would be nice to have her family off her back about dating. So like, yeah, we'll just fake date. And I was into it at first. I thought the two main characters worked really well together and kind of complement each other's personalities, kind of bringing out the best in each other. But it just kind of got boring. The plot kind of felt like it stalled. And I was just like I was just bored. Like, they're together, but I just like wasn't interested because nothing interesting was happening. Them just kind of hanging, I guess. And then towards the end, we had the conflict, and it was like the worst of the miscommunication trope. So I didn't like that. So this was just okay. I am interested in reading the second one with a different couple, just to kind of see how it goes with the second couple, see if it's the author or the couple kind of deal. But yeah, overall, just fine, unfortunately. And the last book I read in 2021 in December was The Huntress by Kate Quinn. This was really good. I really loved the Alice number by this author, so I've been wanting to pick up another book by her, and I'm glad I finally picked one up. This follows a group of Nazi hunters as they're hunting a Nazi murderess known only as the Huntress. They don't know what her real name is. They just kind of know her reputation from what she's done. And on the flip side of that story, we also have this teenager in Boston. This is all post-World War II. And she is kind of suspicious of this new Austrian-German woman that her dad brings home as her fiance. And it's kind of like, seems like she's hiding something. So we kind of see the two sides of this story as she's kind of figuring out why she feels like her new stepmother is suspicious. And then the Nazi hunters as they're hunting down this huntress. We also have a second storyline that's kind of flashbacks to the war of Nina, who is working with the Nazi hunters. And during the war, she was a Soviet fighter pilot, and we kind of see her story of how she became a fighter pilot, her time as a fighter pilot, and then her ultimate defection from the Soviet Union. And I really enjoyed it. I think if I had to like rank the storylines, the Nazi hunter one was the one that really kept me on the edge of my seat, more so than Nina's story. Nina's story was good, but it was like every time we switched back to her story, I was like, wait, no, what's about to happen with the Nazi hunters? I gotta go back and find out. So definitely like there was a little bit more just because of that. But overall, definitely good. I have definitely enjoyed the second Kate Quinn book, and I'm definitely interested in reading more of what she's written for historical fiction because I enjoy it. So this is everything I read in December. If you've read any of these books, let me know. Let me know what you enjoyed reading this month, and I will see you in my next video.